Hello everyone. Welcome back to Whodunit, where we always bring you the most chilling true crime mysteries. Today we're once again diving into the heartbreaking story of a beautiful young girl from West Ohio. So let's uncover this story together. Katelyn Markham was 23, carrying within her an entire sky of colors. This young woman from West Ohio lived for music painting and the simple joy of planting flowers outside her home. Her future was just beginning to unfold. She had recently earned her hairdressing license, and to her family and friends, Katelyn seemed destined for a life filled with light. But then the shadows crept in. Strange anonymous messages began to appear, tied to fake accounts scattered across Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. The words were familiar, almost intimate, yet faceless. Over time they grew relentless, an invasion that turned her safe world into a fragile cage. One night, a video surfaced. It had been filmed right outside her living room window. Soon after, another clip showed something far worse, a figure sitting at her very own kitchen table. This was no longer just harassment. Someone had crossed the threshold, turning her home into a place of fear. From a world painted with vibrant colors, Katelyn's life shifted into a chilling shade of gray. Who could be cruel enough to twist love into obsession? Who knew every corner of her world, every heartbeat of her life? That question hung in the air unanswered. And from that moment on, Katelyn's path veered onto a road she would never return from. At first, Katelyn's life seemed unmatched, painted with ordinary joys. She was the kind of young woman friends described as radiant, an artist who loved nature, who found meaning in crafting scrapbooks, painting with vibrant colors, and laughing with those close to her. She had just stepped into adulthood, with her hairdressing license in hand, ready for opportunities that sparkled on the horizon. But small cracks began to appear in that bright picture. Out of nowhere, Katelyn started receiving strange messages. They came through Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook, each from accounts that seemed to multiply like weeds. Whoever was behind them never showed a face yet. The tone, the rhythm of the words felt too familiar to dismiss. It was the same voice dressed in countless disguises. And the more messages arrived, the more they began to suffocate her peace. Then came the night that shattered her sense of safety. On Facebook, a video appeared. The shaky footage made her blood run cold. It had been filmed just outside her home. Days later, another clip surfaced, this time a shadowy figure, sitting calmly at her kitchen table. It was no longer just messages. Someone had stepped inside her sanctuary, erasing the final boundary between safety and terror. Her best friend, Hannah, later described it as a twisted game of cat and mouse. For Katelyn, it was unbearable. Both furious and helpless, she finally went to the police. She handed them usernames, phone numbers, even one marked Mickey or Ma. When asked, Katelyn admitted Michael had once been the name of an ex-boyfriend, but she wasn't sure. The officers filed a report, advised her to take a self-defense class, and suggested she stay indoors after dark. Yet the truth was painful. Her case notes were thin, her evidence barely examined. Police did drive through the neighborhood, but their records later revealed the patrols lasted less than 5 minutes each time. To Katelyn, it felt like a hollow gesture, a reminder that she might be fighting this battle alone. The harassment only escalated. New numbers, new accounts, new waves of messages. Friends began rotating nights at her apartment, so she wouldn't be alone. The sense of dread grew. The stalker was not only persistent, but fearless, creeping closer each day. Katelyn confided her despair to those she trusted. "I don't know what to do anymore. I feel so anxious. I feel like I'm being left to fend for myself." Here was a young woman who once danced freely in color, now reduced to sitting in a dimly lit room, curtains taped shut, trembling under the weight of her fear. The predator had not revealed himself, but his presence was everywhere, in her phone, at her window, in her very thoughts. It was no longer simply harassment. It was psychological warfare. And for Katelyn, every passing day brought her one step deeper into the shadows. One humid afternoon, while Katelyn was talking with friends about the endless stream of strange messages, a new account appeared on Snapchat. At first, it seemed no different from the dozens of fake profiles she had already endured. But this one carried a name that froze her blood: Mikey. Her hands shook as she stared at the screen. Mikey, that had once been the nickname of her ex-boyfriend, Michael Strauss. A memory she had buried, now resurrected in the most terrifying way. In that instant, the puzzle pieces locked together. Katelyn texted her friend in panic. "Damn it, I know who it is." Michael wasn't a stranger. Years earlier, when Katelyn was just 17, their relationship had begun, innocently sparked by shared passions for music and art. But what started sweet quickly turned bitter, warped by control and jealousy. Katelyn cut ties long ago. Yet behind the mask of anonymity, Michael had never let go. What emerged was a chilling portrait of obsession. He had spent months, perhaps years, weaving false identities, buying disposable phone numbers, fabricating digital personas, just to slip into her life again. This was no accident. It was calculated, a ritual of surveillance and control. Then came the twist that sealed Katelyn's fate. On July 28, 2018, she received messages from someone she believed was her online friend, Nate. They had spoken before about meeting in person. That night, Nate asked if he could come by. Katelyn hesitated, then replied that she was staying home alone. What she didn't realize was that Nate wasn't Nate at all. It was Michael, wearing yet another mask. With one careless message, Katelyn had unknowingly told her stalker exactly where she was, and that no one else was with her. Inside her apartment, Katelyn tried to reclaim a sense of safety. She taped her curtains shut, turned her home into a fortress against prying eyes. Yet even in that effort, there was a haunting irony. She was barricading herself from the very man who already knew every detail of her world. From a psychological perspective, this was the climax of the stalker's power. Michael had maneuvered Katelyn into a state of helplessness, a paralysis born from constant fear. Every false message, every fabricated identity deepened his control. He didn't just want Katelyn afraid, he wanted her to doubt her reality, to lose trust in her friends, in her instincts, even in herself. And for Katelyn, exhaustion was setting in. The once free spirit, vibrant with colors and laughter, was now drained, cornered by the shadows of her past. In her final days of freedom, she lived not in joy, but in constant vigilance, trapped in a game she never agreed to play. The mask had fallen. The faceless predator was no longer an unknown entity. It was Michael Strauss, the man she once loved, now revealed as the monster she feared. On August 1st, 2018, Katelyn's phone went silent. Friends couldn't reach her. Her car remained parked outside her small apartment in Westchester. Her bank cards showed no activity. For a young woman who was always chatting, always connected, the silence was deafening. Her mother, Tam, called the police in panic. "My daughter is missing." But instead of filing the case as an urgent disappearance, officers categorized it under telecommunications harassment. Not stalking, not danger, just a minor offense, as if Katelyn's pleas had never carried weight. That decision, a line of ink on a report, would prove devastating. As investigators began tracing the trail, the evidence pointed in one direction. One of the suspicious numbers Katelyn had received had a 213 area code. It had been purchased online, with no prior history, no attachment to a real identity. Yet the digital fingerprints all circled back to one name: Michael Strauss. His IP addresses, his fake accounts, his emails. They formed a dark web, binding him to the case. On his computer search, histories told a story far darker than any fiction. How long does a dead body smell? Missing girl in Hamilton. Missing girl in Westchester, Ohio. Weeks earlier, he had searched for How to Survive Prison and A Survivor's Guide to Prison. It was as if he had already envisioned not only the crime, but also the punishment. For 3 weeks, Katelyn's loved ones lived in torment. And then on August 24th, hope shattered. Just across a field from Michael's home, searchers found Katelyn's body. She was bound with tie tape, wrapped in a blanket, a plastic bag cinched over her head. The official cause: suffocation. The vibrant girl who once dressed in bright colors, who planted flowers and played music, now lay in silence, her final moments stolen by terror. The crime scene spoke a language of cruelty. To bind, to wrap, to suffocate, each act was a grotesque declaration of ownership. Michael hadn't simply killed Katelyn. He had staged her death as a ritual of dominance, a perverse echo of the control he craved throughout their relationship. At 4 o'clock in the morning the next day, police stormed Michael's home. He was arrested, held on a bond of $4 million. Inside, investigators found the objects that turned suspicion into certainty: Katelyn's driver's license, a lock of her hair, her pink necklace, hidden inside his art portfolio. In the basement, a bed set chained with handcuffs still attached. On his phone, Google Maps revealed an image of the very field where Katelyn's body had been discovered. The circle was complete. From the moment Katelyn received her first anonymous message, Michael had been lurking. He haunted her through screens, then crossed into her home, until finally his darkness consumed her entirely. For Katelyn, the world of light and color had ended in a lonely field under the shadow of a man she once thought she knew. When police raided Michael Strauss's home, the facade of a denial crumbled. Everything Katelyn had feared, everything she had reported, was confirmed in chilling detail. Hidden inside his art portfolio, the very place he once stored sketches, were Katelyn's driver's license, a lock of her hair, and her pink necklace. In the basement, investigators found a bed with handcuffs bolted to its frame. The stench of control lingered in every corner of that house. Confronted with this evidence, Michael spun a grotesque excuse. He claimed Katelyn's death was an accident, the result of what he described as an art project, a torture-themed film. According to him, Katelyn had volunteered. He insisted she suffocated by chance, while a plastic bag was placed over her head, and that he panicked, deleted the footage, and discarded the memory card. A story as hollow as it was cruel. Because on his computer, the searches spoke otherwise: how to delete photos from iCloud. How long does a dead body smell? Teen-forced porn. His excuses collapsed under the weight of his own depravity. Prosecutors cut through his lies with surgical precision. There is no universe in which Katelyn consented to this. This was abduction, torture, and murder. Michael's so-called defense was nothing more than a mask, another attempt to reframe his sadism as something less monstrous. The grand jury returned 9 charges: aggravated murder, 3 counts of tampering with evidence, menacing by stalking, petty theft, abuse of a corpse, and gross abuse of a body. The case files filled more than 800 pages, documenting his every move. Faced with overwhelming proof, Michael chose to plead guilty. In exchange, 6 charges were dismissed, sparing him a public trial, but also sparing him the possibility of a harsher sentence. At sentencing, Michael delivered words meant to sound remorseful. "I never wanted to hurt anyone. If there were any way to bring Katelyn back, I would take her place in an instant." But to Katelyn's family, those words rang hollow. Her father David stood and replied with quiet devastation, "My faith tells me I must forgive, but it does not say when." And I don't know if I ever will. Even Michael's mother addressed Katelyn's family, saying she felt sick over what her son had done, apologizing for the horror her family had endured. It was a reminder that crimes like these fracture not just one family, but two. The judge imposed the maximum allowed sentence at 17.5 years in prison, 15 years to life for murder, 18 months for stalking, 1 year for abuse of a corpse, all to be served consecutively. Michael will have only 2 chances at release, first in the year 2036 and again in 2041. Still, outrage spread. A vibrant young woman's life ended in terror, and yet her killer may walk free through in less than 2 decades. It left an open wound. Had justice truly been served, or had the law merely offered a pale shadow of it? On September 1st, 2018, Katelyn's funeral was held. But it was not cloaked in black. Her family and friends chose to honor her in the way she had lived in color. They wore tie-dye shirts, brought drums, and filled the air with music. Instead of silence, there was rhythm. Instead of darkness, there was light. It was their way of giving back the colors Katelyn had once spread so freely. A tree was planted in her memory, a living tribute to the girl who had loved nature and spent her childhood planting flowers in the soil. And on the very day her body was discovered, a rainbow stretched across the sky, sunlight breaking through the clouds directly over the field where she had been found. To her family, it was a sign, Katelyn reaching out saying thank you, letting them know she was finally at peace. Yet peace was hard to grasp. Katelyn's mother confessed to, "Whenever my mind isn't occupied, I see my daughter. I still feel the moment she looked through that plastic with tape binding her arms, staring at the man who killed her. That image will haunt her forever." Michael Strauss now sits behind bars, sentenced to 17.5 years. But no sentence can heal the hole left in Katelyn's family. No number of years can replace the laughter, the art, the music she should still be creating. Justice was served, but it feels incomplete, a patch on a wound that will never close. Katelyn's death is more than a tragedy. It is a warning. Stalking is not harmless. It escalates. It kills. And when cries for help are ignored, the silence can be fatal. If this story touched you, share it. Speak up when you see the signs. Because silence is not just complicity. Silence can cost a life.